have several dreams. I'm a fairly energetic person and I can achieve a lot. It's my dream, but it requires the right kind of team to come together, is to actually profile amazing Muslim women civilizational heroes that we have never seen on the silver screen. And in my research in my book, I found so many treasures of Muslim women. If you just told their stories, if you just really fleshed out who they were, how they came to be, how they influenced Islamic civilization, that our understanding of Islam would permanently change.
Hi friends, this is Read and Write with Natasha podcast. My name is Natasha Tynes and I'm an author and a journalist. In this channel, I talk about the writing life, review books, and interview authors. Hope you enjoy the journey. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Read and Write with Natasha. I have with me today Dr. Daisy Khan, who is an award-winning speaker, author, and an activist. And she is the founder of WISE, the Women's Islamic Initiative in Spirituality and Equality. For over 20 years, she's been a leading voice on Muslim women's rights and Islam in America, recognized for her efforts in peace building and gender equality. She's a prolific speaker and media commentator, and her memoir, Born with Wings, chronicles her journey as a modern Muslim woman. She's born in Kashmir, and she now lives in the New York area with her husband. Daisy, should I call it Dr. Daisy or Daisy? Thank you for joining me today. I'm so excited to talk to you. As we were chatting before we started recording, I'm familiar with your work. I've been following it all through the years. So I'm excited to have you on the podcast. So, Daisy, I think my first question is about your memoir. I read amazing reviews of it, including one of Queen Noor of Jordan. Yay. And so my first question is, what is this memoir about? I'm someone that believes that everyone needs to tell their story and everyone has a unique story. So what is this memoir about and what makes your memoir unique?
Well, so first of all, I was not even writing a memoir. I went to an agent and told them that I wanted to do a picture book of amazing Muslim women from all over the world, because I had started WISE and I had met all these amazing women who were on the front lines of change everywhere, from Saudi to Yemen to Indonesia. And I said, somebody needs to showcase these women because they're amazing. And I had this idea, and then they said to me, oh, coffee table books are dead. Nobody does those picture books anymore. And then they looked at me and said, have you thought about writing your own story? And I said, well, who would want to read my story? And they said, we would. And that's how the idea for the memoir came about, because I was so busy doing work in my own community, I never thought of sharing my story with people. But my memoirs essentially is about how a woman can step into a greater role that she had envisioned for herself. Because I was a career woman for the first 25 years of my life. Like, I worked in architectural design, and by incidences beyond my control, I fell into this job because I was married to an imam, and 9/11 happened in my neighborhood. And it was my city, my state. My mosque was only 10 blocks from there. Everything was under attack. And I felt personally that I was under attack. My community was under attack. And I had to step up and assume some sort of a responsibility and a mantle. And just by assuming that mantle meant that now I had to get active. In addition to having a career, I now had a second job, evening shift, weekend shift, basically telling people what Islam was and what it was not. And you're somebody who's been in the media and you know how the media covers Islam. You know, it's like 700% more coverage of terrorists than there is of any other religious terrorist, you know. So yeah, we were up against a very big battle. But then slowly by osmosis, I had to assume a leadership role in the community that I never expected I would have. So somebody said to me, well, I was counseling people on weddings because they were all coming to the imam for these weddings. And I was like, oh, he would say to me, you do it. I don't have time for this. And then the first couple said to me, we actually want you to perform the marriage. And I said, oh, women don't perform marriages. And they said, yeah, but we want you to officiate the marriage because we're really comfortable with you. And then I discovered there was nothing prohibiting a woman from officiating a marriage. In Egypt, they've been doing it for a decade. So I officiated my first marriage in 2004. Literally, I was a Muslim woman officiant.
Oh, wow.
And I picked up that role. Then people wanted baby blessings. Then people wanted, a fatwa from me on can I have a donor egg? Like I was hearing all these questions. Can a Muslim woman marry a non-Muslim man? And so my memoir traces that. And it shows how you can evolve into a role that you had never envisioned for yourself, but that was already destined for you. That been planned for you. And you didn't even realize it, and how to keep yourself open for that possibility of serving the greater good and to be a vehicle for that. And so I tell stories of other women and my interaction with other women, including non-Muslim women, and what I learned from them. And so it's my own journey, but it's also a way to show what woman is capable of when she really puts some mind to it.
Oh, wow, fascinating. I was also, and I remember I heard about it back in the day, but I don't remember much the details. But I read something about Ground Zero Mosque, and there was a lot of chatter about it. And I'm just curious, what is your perspective of what happened, and what were the lessons learned?
Yeah, well, there were a lot of lessons to be learned, but primarily it was, I was the one behind it because I'm the one who kind of like conceived the idea of what kind of a community center Muslims needed. Because, we had seen the evolution of Christians in America and Jews in America, and everybody eventually establishes community centers like cultural, like the YMCA and the JCC. So, you have your synagogue, but you also have your cultural center where Christians live a Christian life. And, there's reading rooms, there's libraries, there's cafes, there's gymnasiums. So I said, this is what we have to do. This is what Muslims have to create. And we bought a building very close to our mosque, which was just 2.5 blocks away from Ground Zero. And then we planned to build it. And we announced the plans, and our community board loved the idea. And they said, because we were renewing the neighborhood was dead at that point because of the attack. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, all these Islamophobic machinery came out against us and started attacking us and saying it's a Ground Zero mosque. That's how they labeled it. So the press covered it as a Ground Zero mosque. It was neither at Ground Zero, nor was it a mosque. See. It was a community center that would have one floor designated for prayer space. And the rest was kitchen, cultural center. And it was supposed to be multi-faith. Like people of all religions could come and interact with her, and we had plans for a souk and all this great stuff. And it never manifested because the plan was very premature. It was just a plan, right? Because we still had to fundraise for it. We hadn't done the fundraising for it. But, they pulled the rug from underneath us, and they made sure that we did not proceed. And what was the lesson I learned there? The lesson I learned there was that America always has difficulty with newcomers, and you're always challenged. And the integration of newcomers is always prevented by some group or the other. And in our case, what that meant was they wanted to continue to frame Muslims as a foreigner, like an outsider who does not have the right to be integrated into the American fabric. Mm. And so that was the message, because the message to me specifically was not you, not here, not now. And I was like, why?
And how did they stop? How did they, let's say the Islamophobes, as you call them, how did they manage to stop the building of the mosque?
So first of all, they rallied together. All these groups that hated Muslims for all kinds of reasons rallied together. They came together. They started a campaign called the Stop the Islamization of America. They linked terrorism to us. They said, oh, this is just another place where, bombs will be fabricated. So they took that trope of Islamophobia that had been that had gotten into the imagination of the American public from the terrorist attacks of 9/11 and from the Iranian Revolution and from the war in Afghanistan, all these negative images, and they tied those negative images to the center and they scared people. And so then we couldn't raise the money because it's very hard to raise money when you are in a massive national news every single day. So the plans couldn't materialize because we didn't have the ability to bring the right kind of donors forward. Donors were scared because they were employing the same kinds of strategies that they're employing today with the students who are protesting, calling them terrorist sympathizers. So imagine that you have college campuses, and then and here was a center that was going to become the flagship, and then we were going to establish in other cities a similar smaller version of that. So that was very threatening to them, and they wanted to make sure that we didn't proceed. So we could not continue because we didn't have.
So would you try again now? I mean, I'm gonna talk about the shifting of opinions. Yeah.
It's a dream that I hope I can see in my own life. And many people have told me, why don't you rethink the whole thing? And it's possible. I mean, if I can just clear some other things from my plate and I can focus on it, we need it. We still need it. We desperately need it.
And there are no other Muslim community centers around the nation, like in Michigan or any other places?
Well, there is a museum, but there is nothing like this, which is kind of a template. People are still building mega mosques. Now there are mega mosques, sort of, modeled after the mega churches.
Mega churches, yeah.
They're similar, but still it's a mosque primarily with additional spaces. But ours was primarily a center that was open to all, meaning it's a center that's open to all. You can have membership, you can come. And if you want to go to a gym in our center, you can do that. If you want to take cooking classes in our center, you can do that. That was the plan. The plan was to open it up to the public. So you're inviting the public in and still you have space for your prayer and your, so
Interesting.
I hope in my lifetime, Natasha, I can do it. We just need some good donors to come forward and say, hey, I'm on board and I'll get it built.
Yeah. So let's say that's good. That's good to hear. So let's say that this was 2004, right? We're 20 years later now. And
it was 2010.
That was 2010. Okay, so let's say 14 years. Or no, 16 years. I need to do the math. But so if you would do it again now, would you get the same pushback or even more after what happened the past year, the war in Gaza and all of that? Because honestly, for me, I've been living in the US for 20 years. I've never seen as much support for like the Palestinian cause as much as I saw last year. People say it's because the Gen Z and the students at the Gen Z, they're more into social justice than, let's say, millennials and Gen X's like me and all of that. But so if you try again this year, would you get the same response, or maybe even you would get more opposition? So I'm curious, what's your analysis?
Well, first of all, we're very matured and we know how to handle the opposition now. At that time, we were taken by surprise, right? Because we were so surrounded by our little, interfaith community. Everything was beautiful. We were interacting with one another. We had done theater projects together. We had built a whole kumbaya, the Jews, the Muslims, and then we get attacked from nowhere from outsiders who were not even part of our community. So we were taken by surprise. And because the attack was always in the news, it was very hard for us it was a crisis. They say crisis communication. So we couldn't get out of the crisis because then we had elections and then all the people who are running for office seized on it. And then it went on for 6 months. So we were in the news for 6 months. It was the biggest reported religion news story in America that year, 40,000 citations.
Oh, wow.
I can't imagine what happens to you when you've been cited so many times. So today, it's a very different world. Yes, I would absolutely tell you, we have now allies that we don't know who they are, where they are, they will come out of the woodworks. So if we were to come back and say, we're building that center that you all heard about that never got built because of all this opposition, and we want to build it, and it's a private project, and we're inviting all these allies together, I think we would be able to build it. I think that there's a whole new level of consciousness that people didn't have at that time. People have a heightened awareness of how much Islamophobia there is in America, how much Muslims have been inaccurately branded, how Islam has been twisted for political aims, all those reasons. And of course, since since October 7th, what we have witnessed overseas, people are seeing that Muslims are being unfairly treated in America, right? They're not being even acknowledged. People have lost entire families. They're not being acknowledged. So, people of conscience are feeling that pinch, like it's unfair, right? So you have a lot of people who want to help, and they don't know how to help, and they don't know how to come forward. So I think that this is a better time for us, ironically, than the previous time.
Interesting. So, what caused the number of allies to increase through the years?
Well, first of all, there was a lot of educational outreach that we had already done. So some of it was just knowledge sharing, right? We did a lot of excellent programming, like getting people to come to Ramadan, meeting people, Muslims as individuals, as humans, as neighbors. So that kind of outreach built a lot of friendships, bonds of friendship, right? Even today, when October 7th happened, I thought of my Jewish friends and my Jewish neighbors, and I picked up and I called up the people that I needed to call. Say, is everything okay? Are you okay? Somebody from your family okay? And then I found out some of the members of our community, their families were in the kibbutz.
Yeah.
Just receiving a call from me was enough for them to say, oh my God, we haven't spoken since then. Things have, and sometimes they look at me and they say, I'm sorry for what's happening. So once you build those kinds of relationships, then people share that with others. And so, number one, of who Muslims are, what their religion really is, separating the terrorists from the religion itself. A lot of that educational work was done over the last 2 decades. And so then today we have the Gen Z generation that has grown up with a lot of diversity within the school system.
Yeah.
They usually know a Muslim. They usually know an Arab. They usually know a Palestinian. They usually know an African American. They usually know an immigrant. So they are so aware of who these people really are. So they don't need to be taught anything. They're already aware. And that's why they're on the streets, you see? So from the older generation that we educated and from the younger generation, this is why the two coming together is the confluence of these two. That's an interesting confluence of the older generation that we educated and the younger generation that's already primed because they were already prepared for this in the school system.
So since you study Islamophobia, and I think specifically concerning Muslim women, correct? Do you think after October 7th, compared to 9/11 and October 7th, where is the level of Islamophobia now, given the context of the Gen Z, that there's, all of these different things that happened? Where do we stand when it comes to Islamophobia?
So Islamophobia was very much confined to people who were seen as, Islamophobic machinery would be unleashed at people that were doing something that the Islamophobes didn't want them to do. So like building a mosque, the Islamophobes would come out and say, oh, you're not going to build a mosque here because this is a place of terrorism, blah, blah, blah. So then the mosque would get attacked, the leadership would get attacked, and then the mosque would have to attack back, and they would have to hire lawyers and fight. And in many cases, they have fought, and thank God for religious freedom that is guaranteed under the 4 freedoms that we have, religious freedom. And often, majority of the time, these cases have been won. So, but now Islamophobia is at a completely different level. It's a new iteration of Islamophobia, which I have never seen before. And now, if you are a young Muslim and you're in campus or you're a protester, you are now as much of a threat as that mosque was, right? You are as much of a threat as quote unquote that terrorist overseas who was threatening you. So you are linked to terrorism just by the virtue of the fact that you are coming out and protesting. So that's one dangerous thing. So that means now we don't have the right to protest. We don't have the right to express ourselves. So the things that we take for granted, that religious freedom that we took for granted, and the thing that we also are guaranteed, which is freedom of expression, is now something that we have to be worried about, right? Because it's very hard to fight that fight, because the other one has a very specific statute. You can go to the legal community and you can tell the legal community, hey, we're trying to build because you're building a structure and they're preventing us from building that structure. But what are you going to tell a lawyer? Oh, they're preventing me from speaking, right? So that becomes very hard to use the legal system for that.
But isn't there like the First Amendment, the right for assembly, all of that you can use legally?
But they always tie it to terrorism. They say, oh, well, you're really a potential terrorist or you're a potential security threat. So that's a very dangerous area to go into. That because they don't know how to control this, so they keep using these tropes. Then there's doxing, which people's identities are made public. There is jobs being rescinded. You have a job offer, you come from an Ivy League school, your job got rescinded. Charities are under attack. People are debanked. Like you get a call from your bank saying we're not banking with you anymore. Imagine.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
In the US,
in America, yes, people have been debanked. African Americans
crypto. Then we should all go to crypto, decentralized. Okay.
Yeah. So you have a lot of new issues that people don't even know that are happening. You can get terminated because a troll from overseas reported you, and you can get terminated from headquarters, and your supervisor doesn't even know you're getting terminated because you posted something on social media. So, and then also because most people don't know how to have a conversation about Israel and Palestine in their workplace, in their school, is creating a lot of silencing and a lot of friction that even the management doesn't know how to address, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Because it's such a fraught issue that people think there are two sides to this, there are two competing narratives, but there's shared humanity in the middle. So where's the shared humanity? And people can't come to that point of shared humanity because they don't know how to discuss this. So my work right now is about going into corporations, into the workplace, into the schools to teach them how to have a conversation about this topic because of the years of experience that I have with this topic. But also because personally I'm very passionate that women somehow, the Islamophobic trope is that all women are oppressed and women are subjugated. And all women are covered. So therefore, if a woman is wearing hijab, she's a national security threat because she's the other and she's unknown to this culture. So that's the framing. And that framing came from Afghanistan and the Iranian Revolution when we saw those burqa-clad women and chador-clad women, and they were seen as the other. And then that is imposed on to the general public here, the Muslim woman who's wearing hijab, who's born in Brooklyn, right?
So do you think some people don't see you like as Muslim enough because you're not wearing hijab and you say, you can't speak for Muslim women? Do you get that?
I don't get that too much because I'm such a leader in the community because I've been a leader in the community for many, many years. So privately, they might be thinking that, but publicly, no one has said that to me yet.
Yeah.
But because I've been on the media so much, I became the voice of the Muslim community. Even after 9/11, I used to get calls all the time because I knew that there was this gap. And if I didn't fill the gap, then there would be nobody speaking on it, right? So, I remember once Fox wanted a immediate on-camera response because there was some video game that had come out that said Allahu Akbar. And they needed somebody to, and I said, I'm cooking in my kitchen. I can't move right now. Don't worry about it. We'll come there. I swear. And they came to my house. I was in the middle of cooking rice and biryani and steam was going on. I took off my apron and I stood in front of all these beautiful hadith embossed books, and I just, wiped off all the stuff off my face. And I said, okay, I gave my comments because that's how important it was to always be on camera and to speak to the public. So I've done my little contribution. And this is why I think there's not been a pushback on me, because I'm recognized as a Muslim woman leader.
Oh, that's good. That's good to know. So, still on the topic of like attire or what to wear. For me, the issue now is not the hijab. What's happening is the kofiyeh, right? So I grew up in Jordan. So my grandparents wear kofiyeh. I wear like when it gets really cold and sometimes it snows in Jordan, we always wear the kofiyeh as a scarf.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just like what I wear, and I have a number of them. I think I might have a picture here of my grandparents. Yeah, I'll show you one. So this is like the old kofiyeh. These are my grandparents. She was born in Palestine and he was born in Jordan. And so that was like a different style of kofiyeh. So for me, that's just what we were. It has nothing to do with politics or religion or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And now in the US, can you even wear it? Now I'm honestly scared to wear it. In the past, it was not the case. So how do you see the shift when it comes to traditional dress?
So this is something that we must never allow, because this is cultural co-opting somebody's culture and denying somebody their cultural symbolism and tying something that is so integral to the culture itself, and then co-opting that and calling it tying it to the trope of terrorism, which is what it is, right? It's a tying to the trope of terrorism. This is extremely dangerous. And I have been very vocal about this, and I've been speaking to all my colleagues. And every time I mention it, I say, it's unacceptable. You can't do that. I mean, I'm a Kashmiri. If somebody told me a Kashmir shawl all of a sudden became like, because somebody wore it and then I was wearing it, and it's like 2 degrees of separation that we call, right?
Yeah.
Separation, that somehow I'm now wearing a Kashmir shawl and I can't wear that, so that's basically co-opting your culture. So that's unacceptable. What I have not seen, which I would like to see, is a day where people take back the kafiyeh. And like Muslims took back the hijab and they called it the annual hijab day. They created a hijab day. I think there should be a kafiyeh day where everybody talks about what it means to them. And
interesting. Yeah.
That way you can tell your story of your grandparents and what it means to you, because the American public has not seen that. They have not seen a to it, right? So all they see is 3 kids in Vermont who got shot because they were speaking in Arabic and they were wearing a kafiyeh. And now that creates a fear amongst everybody else to wear it.
Yeah.
I went to a Palestinian event the other day. It was a fair, of little stores, and now young entrepreneurs have created the kind of T-shirt that you're wearing, and the T-shirt has these very beautiful, like a teddy bear, and the teddy bear is wearing a little scarf that's in the shape of a kafiyeh. It's like the tiniest little thing, but it's there. You have to get very close up to it to see it. But so they are getting very creative on how to show it. But no, I don't. You should never let somebody co-opt your culture.
Interesting.
Ever.
And and in Jordan, it's both Christians and Muslims wear it. It has nothing to do with religion or anything. Yeah, I mean,
all over the Middle East. I mean, I'm like, what are you going to ask? Crown Prince Salman to remove his kafiyeh?
Yeah. Yeah. And like my uncles, and they still wear it. So I love the idea of the International Day of Kafiyeh. I mean, let's work on it. I love it. I mean, because just to take it back and realize it's...
You have to take it back, and you have to take it back culturally. You have to, because it's a cultural symbol, and you have to take it back with arts and with culture. And, I've seen a lot of people who wear fashionable clothes now that are, made with kafiyeh and, the beautiful And yeah, I mean, it's like it's something that once it gets framed in a certain way, it's hard to change that framing. And right now, there's still an awareness about it, and not everybody thinks of it that way, but there are some people who may object it. But you don't want to be in that space where you're hiding your kafia in your drawer because you don't want to wear it because you think that it's going to be endangered. So
Yeah. So fascinating. So I want to go back to your book, Born with Wings. Did you tell the story of the mosque and what happened and did you offer some sort of a way forward? I'm just curious how you framed what you went through in your memoir. Was it just telling, or did you actually give some solutions?
well, I think because I had to report on what happened and what I felt and how we were treated. So I do mention at the very end that it made me more resilient, and it also I lost all fear of death forever.
Ah, wow. Because of death threats?
Yeah, death threats, they come and they go, and you have no fear of death after that, because if you can overcome something that is such a horrendous attack on you, your person, your religion, your everything, your money, all of these false reports of the money is coming from Qatar. They're taking Saudi money. What? I mean, it was falsification of stuff online, getting reported without anybody checking into it. And then you had to sit there and justify that and explain that. And this is when my faith came in, right? So I would walk into the office and I would have this all of my team looking at me because there were these horrendous headlines every morning. You had to look at. I don't know if you know this, but we have a newspaper called New York Post, and that's like a tabloid newspaper.
The New York Post, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Every morning there was like a tabloid picture of something having to do with the mosque.
Yeah.
And so they would buy that and they would keep that, and we would always have a morning meeting, and I would tell people, I said, I'm going to tell you the hadith of the Prophet that's really informing me right now. I said that Prophet used to walk by a lane and there would be a woman throwing garbage at him because she was so angry with him and his message. And the garbage on those days was entrails, human entrails. So he had to duck, but he would keep walking. And one day he walked and all his companions would say, "Why do you do that?" And he would just duck. And then one day he didn't see her. The next day he didn't see her. And then he said, "What happened to her? Where is she?" And then they found out that she was sick. And he said, "I'll go visit her." And he went to.
Oh, that's nice.
And then she said, "Muhammad, you are a good man. I didn't realize," and she realized her mistake and her error. And of course, she became his follower. And so I told that story. I said, today, those human entrails are the newspapers. The newspapers that are coming to you, think of it as an entrail that is being thrown at you. And I just want you to just pack them up, record them, put them on an Excel spreadsheet of when these happen, and then just ignore them because we're going to ignore these entrails. So sometimes, this is when my faith and my belief in God and belief in what we were going through, because I felt that the challenge was also meant to teach us how to become more resilient as a community and to never fear death, because, so I become fearless as a result of that. And so I'm grateful for that moment, because sometimes trials and tribulations are a blessing in disguise.
Correct. Yeah. So I'm curious about your publishing journey. Many of the authors that I talk to really struggle with finding an agent, finding a publisher for many reasons. And, many of them are really talented, but they just, I guess, did not get the opportunity to go in front of an agent. I think given your role in the media, you have a lot of networks, so maybe you were able to publish the unit book, but how did you land your agent or your publisher? What was your publishing journey like?
Yeah, I think that you're right. I was a bit more privileged than most people are because I was a known entity already, and like I said, I wasn't even planning to write my book. People told
Yeah.
me I should write the book,
Okay.
and there was already an agent that somebody had connected me to that I just wanted to do a publishing book of Muslim women. So once I landed an agent, that agent was able to get me, Random House, an imprint of Random House. And so I was introduced to it's an agent is very important because then they put you in front of all the publishing houses. But things have changed a lot since then. Publishing houses have changed the way now people have many more options of self-publishing or hybrid self-publishing and going with somebody who has expertise. But my biggest challenge was writing while I was also working, because I was not only a writer, I was I worked full time, I was traveling. So I had to find ways to write and to where what was my biorhythm, you know? People don't know what works for them. So a writer friend of mine just told me, just spend 2 hours writing. Find the best time when you can write, like when you're really creative. And I discovered that my best writing time was 9 p.m.
Oh, wow.
9 p.m. to 12 a.m.
Yeah.
That's when I was able to, because everything was quiet.
Yeah.
If I could just designate just 2 hours, dedicated 2 hours, I could finish it. And then, of course, I had an excellent, editor. I had several people helping me craft the whole outline and everything. So that was my journey. But then I wrote this book. I don't know if we mentioned this. This is my latest publication.
Oh, yeah, I saw it. While doing the research. Yeah, 30 rights. Yeah.
So this took 4 years to write, and it just got published. So it's out there on Amazon right now and bookstores.
Okay.
This book I wrote because of the demand in the community itself, saying, do I have the right to inheritance? Of course you have the right to inheritance. What about polygamy? Oh, well, let me explain everything about polygamy. What about a woman's leadership? Can a woman be a leader? Can a woman have a career? All these questions that I had heard through my nonprofit work, and I was already doing work in this area. I thought, why don't I put this all together in one place? So people have one reference book where they can go and look up pretty much anything at one given time in one scan. And then I did the research. I started researching, and I left it completely open. And I wasn't writing. I was doing primarily research first. Now I had to research the Quran. Then I had to research the Hadith. Then I had to research what all the jurists had said over all the different schools. And then I had to see what the opposition was to that right.
Yeah.
Like, what are people using against women?
Yeah.
And then I had to find women in a medieval era, who these women were that were already living examples of these rights. Yeah. And then I had to find women in contemporary times who were also, were exemplars of that right. Like, women's financial independence, right? Or women's wealth management. So I discovered that the chairwoman of the Saudi Stock Exchange is a Muslim woman.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So can you imagine that? That stock exchange is like probably the biggest stock exchange in the world, next to, some of maybe New York or something. But I tied her to Khadija, who was a tradeswoman in the 7th century. And then I said, here we have a 7th century example, and here we have another woman who's somehow involved in contemporary times in a sort of a similar role. So I juxtapose the two and I show the two, but I also then provide evidence of women's financial independence and entrepreneurship from the Quran. What does the Quran say about it? So this way people have, they have this book in their hand where they can say, okay, I know what my rights are. So
did you get any pushback? Because some people have different interpretations of what they see, so they would have different views. Like, as we know, some would insist for women to wear the hijab, or someone say that women get half the inheritance than her brother. So what was the feedback that you got?
Well, so far, mostly people who are reading this book are women, but also men who are very supportive of women.
Okay, good. Good.
So those men are all on board. They're like, yes, this is what we always believed. When I was writing this book and it was done, I gave it to my father. My father's 92 years old, and his first three children were his three daughters. Okay, so he was a father of three daughters, and then two sons came after that. So you can imagine what a womanist my dad had to be, because he had three daughters, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
gave it to my dad and I said, can you read this? And he says, oh, this is too scholarly for me. I mean, my dad is not a scholar, but he read it. And then he came back to me and he said, I cannot believe that my daughter wrote this book. I learned so much, but I can also tell you every controversy regarding a Muslim woman is in the book. He said,
Yeah.
you have addressed everything in here.
Yeah, that's what I thought, that you would have probably some pushback. Yeah.
What we call controversy today in older days was not a controversy. It was a difference of
It
opinion.
was a discussion in the majlis and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a difference of opinion. This scholar had a difference of opinion with this scholar, and it was respected. I have my opinion. I disagree with your opinion, but I respect your opinion. That was our tradition. So
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
what's happened is we have lost that tradition. So we think, oh, she wrote this in the book. That's not the interpretation. Well, that's your interpretation is equally valid. My interpretation is equally valid. It's the ijtihad of how I arrived at this that you should be asking, that you should be appreciating that. So
Correct.
how did I come to this conclusion? How did I arrive at this conclusion? That's the discussion, not what is the end result of this. So on the hijab article, I had to spend literally 7 pages on that, because you know how complex that is, right? And it's not.
Do you speak Arabic? Do you speak and
No,
understand
I don't.
Arabic?
And this is the other thing. So I want people to know how much real jihad went into doing this research.
اجتهاد اجتهاد.
Not just, but like the struggle, like the
Yeah.
struggle every
Yeah.
day, relying
Yeah.
on everybody else's work. But okay,
Yeah.
so I also, what you asked me a very interesting question. You said to me, what was the lesson I learned? What was I trying to convey through Born with Wings? I had not written this book when I published Born with Wings, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So I want people to know what you can be capable of if you really put your mind to it. I never imagined that I would become a lay jurist. I never imagined in my wildest dreams an architectural designer who came from Kashmir to the United States to study the arts that I would be writing a book like this. But you know what? Some people would be even afraid to write this book because they would say, well, I don't speak Arabic. I'm not a scholar. I'm not this, I'm not that. And I said, okay, I'll break the mold for everybody else because I want to disprove. And I want people to tell me, I mean, listen, the few scholars that have read it have said it's an amazing encyclopedia of a reference book. Of a few male scholars have read it, who I respect very much. But the point is, if you can put your mind to it and you have the right intention, and you are very much about seeking the truth and then showing how you arrived at that, that's what is valuable. And so I wanted to disprove this notion that a woman like me, who looks like me, who doesn't look the quintessential part of a Muslim woman, can actually produce a book like this. So this is the message. The message is just go for it, because God is yours. You are a creature of God. God has invested in you this authority, and has given you the permission to do God's work. And if you feel that you want to be of service to God, go for it. Nothing's preventing you from doing that.
Yeah. This is great. So for your book Born with Wings, since you mentioned the whole mosque, or no, the whole community center and all of that, did it open a new wound for you? And did it also bring the people who attacked you?
No, actually, it was a closure, because when you write, you put your words writing and just the process of writing it and putting it down on paper and letting people read it and then people being inspired by it. I get comments on my info email all the time. Oh, I'm reading your book. I was so inspired by it. I can't believe what you went through, or I'm so inspired by what you've done. So the book is out there. And for me, it was a closure of a chapter. And but I didn't realize that this chapter would open up. The chapter that's now.
Okay.
I never expected that I would see even a more shriller, more sort of sharper edge to Islamophobia than when we had experienced it. You know, I never expected that college kids would be attacked. I never expected the level, that a doctor, would lose his entire clinic because he ripped a poster somewhere that he thought was going to create more conflict. So I never imagined that ordinary Muslims would be subject to this, and that's what worries me today.
So what's your next project? I know you just finished this book, but if you want to write another book, what would it be about, given the context of a currently an evolving situation that it keeps evolving every single day?
Yeah.
What would you?
Well, I have a couple of projects in mind. Number one, I think that I have to go public with the message of this book because people are receiving information differently than just reading. So I will probably be creating some kind of a platform, a podcast, something that is available on YouTube for people to listen to. So the message can be conveyed through that platform. Second, it's my dream. I have several dreams. I'm a fairly energetic person and I can achieve a lot. It's my dream, but it requires the right kind of team to come together, is to actually profile amazing Muslim women civilizational heroes that we have never seen on the silver screen. And in my research in my book, I found so many treasures of Muslim women. If you just told their stories, if you just really fleshed out who they were, how they came to be, how they influenced Islamic civilization, that our understanding of Islam would permanently change. Because number one, you would show that women were so active in early Islam and shaped so much of the thinking of Islam. And to this day, they're doing it. But just telling the stories of these heroic women in a kind of a Netflix type of a series, where you are doing an exploratory, walking around. Like, just imagine telling the story of Hagar.
Yeah.
That story is like theater.
Yeah.
It's literally so theatrical. It's full of tension. There's conflict between Sarah and Hagar. There's family dispute. There's the baby in the desolate valley. There's the struggle of the woman going up and down these hills. And then the woman founds Makkah, right? She's the founder of Makkah. I don't care what anybody says. She stayed behind. The well came about because of her. She was the one who was managing the water well. People were flocking and a town got established, right? So do we ever think of her that way? No. We only think of her at the time of the Sa'i when we're going between Safa and Marwa. But her story is so integral and she lived 4,000 years ago. How is it that we have not told her story in an effective, to show her bravery, to show her resilience? What does it mean to say, okay, I'll leave behind, you can go. I have a little baby here with me. That's okay, go ahead. I have a bag of dates and some water to survive on. Would you do that if your husband said to you, I have to leave you in a desolate valley because I got a message from God? Would you do that? So I ask women today, would you do that? Would you have that kind of courage? If somebody told you, I need to leave you in a mountain by yourself?
Probably not. Probably not.
Would you have that kind of courage and conviction in God? So so this is about testing. So if we could just find the right kind of people to come forward, we can change the whole perspective of Islam through the lens of women. And these women's stories have never been told. They've never been told. They're not even in the consciousness of Muslims. While I was writing my book, and I was like, how do we not know this stuff? I mean, we always know about Khadija, we know about Aisha, we know about Hagar, we know about Maryam, These are the 4 or 5 people that we know. But we don't know that the oldest university in the world that is still running, still operating, first degree granting university was established by a Muslim woman in Fez, Morocco, Fatima. And that is what gave rise, and it's older than Sorbonne and Oxford and all these kind of quote unquote established Western universities. She established it. And how do we not know that? How do we not know that story? There's a school still there that you can go to and trace that. So I think film is where it needs to be now, and we need to work on this. And we need to have women donors that come from all over the world who have deep pockets who say, you know what, let's do it, and then we can get Netflix to do it, and then it can be global. That's what my that's where I want to focus my next energy on, because that will change men's perception of women as well. Because so many men think that women should be relegated to only this role, and then you see an ancient woman who was playing this role. That breaks the stereotype within the community as well.
So I saw you're pretty active on social media, and social media is a
Not so active, actually. Not as active as
I used to. Yeah, but now it's social media is a double-edged sword, and I'm just curious if people wanna reach out to you. What's the best place to reach you? Is it like through Twitter, because you were named one of, I think, the 100?
Yeah, I mean, they can reach me through Twitter. I'm on Facebook. They can just follow me, and they can friend me, send me a friend request. I am on Instagram. I think it's Daisy Khan New York, NYC, Daisy Khan NYC on Instagram. Facebook is just Daisy Khan. LinkedIn, I am on LinkedIn. Also, I think Dr. Daisy Khan. And then on Twitter, just Daisy Khan. So I'm on all these platforms. People can also do info@daisycon.com. So I do have my own website. I do have an info. I get those emails immediately. So if somebody is seeking information or wanting to connect with me, that's the way to do it.
And your books are available everywhere, right? On Amazon, on the bookstore.
Yeah, so this is the hottest one. If you're interested in learning about women's rights, definitely get this one. And then Born with Wings is also on Amazon and in bookstores. It's an older book. It's from 2018. Both these books are available. So, I mean, I have some other ideas for books, but, because now people are telling me you need to write another book. Actually, somebody said to me, you need to write about the Prophet, because while writing this book, I really fell in love with the Prophet, because I fell in love with 7th century Arabia because I felt so comfortable there. The milieu, what was happening, how men and women were interacting, how the Prophet was interacting with women was similar to how my father would interact with women. He was so supportive of women every time he was trying to lift a woman up and telling the men, stop doing this to your women. He was always there, empowering women, enabling them, helping them. How did we change? How did it become so misogynistic when our Prophet was so forward-looking, so progressive, so empowering of women? So people are telling me I need to write just that part, about the Prophet, how he was with women. So that's something that I might consider doing.
Oh, this is great. Well, Dr. Daisy, this has been amazing. I learned a lot from you, and I'm sure the audience learned a lot. And for anyone who wants to reach Dr. Daisy, you can find her books, find her on social media and her website. And for anyone who's listening or watching, thank you for joining us for another episode of Read and Write with Natasha. And until we meet again. Thank you for tuning in to Read and Write with Natasha. I'm your host, Natasha Tynes. If today's episode inspired you in any way, please take the time to review the podcast. Remember to subscribe and share this podcast with fellow book lovers. Until next time, happy reading, happy writing.